What if Pakistan redrew every single internal boundary tomorrow morning? New provinces, new administrative maps, a completely reorganized federation. Would a single kilowatt hour of electricity get cheaper? Would one new factory open? Would a single young graduate find a job that didn't exist yesterday? Thanks for joining me for this episode. I'm Naeem Sidhu. Stay with me because today I'm going to discuss for a nation's growth, what works in reality and what doesn't. Nobody in this conversation is asking that question because right now the entire country is consumed by a debate over lines on a map. Who gets a new province, who loses control, who gains it? Supporters, they're calling it decentralization. The critics, they're calling it a power grab. But both sides are arguing about the same thing. Who holds the pen of authority? But nobody is asking what that pen is actually supposed to write. Here's what a constitutional amendment or any big administrative decision is actually supposed to deliver in the end. What it should be: the economic uplift, not symbolism, not a rearranged organizational chart, but economic uplift. And for a country like Pakistan, that's not optional, it's urgent. One of the lowest per capita incomes in the region, rather in the world. Foreign debt piling on local debt. A growth rate that adjusted for population is barely positive, in some quarters negative. So any restructuring that doesn't move those numbers isn't reform, it's rearrangement. And here's the part that gets skipped every single time. Change should never be about one person or one institution ending up with more power. That's not a reform target. That's just a transfer of control from one set of hands to another, with the public no better off in either scenario. So here's the real question. Is this reform or is it very expensive distraction? To answer that, we don't need opinions. We need a pattern. And history actually gives us one, if we are willing to look at it honestly. Let's talk about Japan and China just for a minute, and you'll know why I jumped away from this region. Nations that successfully restructured themselves never did it for symbolic reasons. They did it because they were being crushed by a crisis, and they needed their institutions to serve a very specific, very deliberate economic plan. Not a vague promise, but a plan. Look at Japan in 1868. The Meiji government didn't dismantle centuries of feudal domains because it sounded progressive. They did it because foreign powers were circling and Japan needed a centralized economy that could industrialize fast enough to defend itself. The restructuring wasn't the goal, it was the tool. Or look at China in late 1970s. Deng Xiaoping didn't decentralize fiscal power because of some ideological awakening all of a sudden. He did it because local officials needed a direct personal financial incentives to go build industry with their own hands. Again, the structural change was a tool serving an economic outcome that was decided first. That's the pattern every time. The structure comes after the vision, never before it. So here's the question worth sitting with. Does Pakistan's current constitutional debate have that vision? Or does it have the tool and nothing to build with it? To understand why this gap matters so much, you have to see how national power is actually built. It isn't random. It follows something close to a chain. Here I need your keen attention, please. Institutions shape state capacity. State capacity enables policy. Policy attracts investment. Investment builds industry. Industry creates jobs. Jobs generate exports. Exports drive growth. And growth, real, sustained growth, is what actually becomes national power. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. When an economy stalls, people almost always blame policy, bad decisions, bad leadership, bad timing. But if you trace the chain backward, the failure usually starts much earlier. At the institutional level, if the foundation can't hold weight, it doesn't matter how good the policy sitting on top of it looks on paper. You can announce the best economic policy in the world and it will still collapse if the institution beneath it was never built to carry that weight in the first place. So, which link is actually broken here? Let's talk about 4 countries and 1 discipline. Some of you, my dear viewers, you may be already thinking, okay, but doesn't this require one specific type of government? Authoritarian control, maybe, or a particular economic ideology? Actually, no. And this is where it gets genuinely interesting, because Asia gives us 4 completely different answers to the same problem. And they all ended up in the same place. China chose centralized state-directed industrial planning and used it to dominate entire global supply chains. South Korea built a disciplined developmental bureaucracy that worked hand in hand with massive private conglomerates. Vietnam opened itself through targeted market reforms and absorbed a wave of global manufacturing. And then there's India. India took a genuinely different route. Competitive federalism, where different states compete against each other for investment, layered on top of one of the most ambitious digital infrastructure pushes anywhere in the world. Think about what that actually required. Coordinating a democracy of over 1 billion people with wildly different state governments, different languages, different priorities, and still building the institutional muscle to pull hundreds of millions of people into a digital economy. That's not a small achievement. That's one of the most difficult governance problems on the planet. And by most measures, India has been solving it in real time. So here's what should actually stop you. 4 completely different political systems, one-party centralized planning, bureaucratic corporate partnership, market liberalization, and competitive democratic federalism. And every single one of them stayed locked onto the exact same targets. What are the targets? Productivity, exports, human capital, different constitutions, different ideologies, but identical economic discipline. So if the political system isn't the deciding factor, what is? Let's have a look. What Pakistan's institutions are actually optimized to reward. This is where we have to turn the lens back onto Pakistan, not the politicians, not the parties, the actual machinery underneath all of them that keeps running no matter who's technically in charge. And what you find is a system that has been quietly, structurally optimized for the wrong kind of economic activity. Real estate speculation is more profitable than building an export factory. Import monopolies are safer bets than manufacturing risk. And add to that fragmented urban governance that makes it nearly impossible for business to operate at real scale, different authorities controlling lands, utilities, and permits in the same city, none of them coordinated. And the debt burden so large, it swallows national savings before they can ever reach a school, a hospital, or a power grid. This is not an accident. It's not incompetence. It's a system that has been engineered deliberately over decades to protect a small entrenched center of power. You understand what I mean? That benefits from exactly this kind of stagnation. Global creditors get their interest payments. Local elites get their monopolies. And the wider population is left managing a permanent engineered scarcity. It's not a broken system. It's a system working exactly as designed, just not for you. So why a new federation still can't answer the real question? No, let's go back to the constitutional debate. New provinces, redrawn boundaries, reorganized federation. Does any of that touch that machinery? Does it lower the cost of electricity for a factory owner? Does it close the skill gap for millions of young people trying to compete in AI-driven global economy? Or is it simply building a more elaborate container without ever deciding what's supposed to go inside it? Because that's really what an administrative boundary is, an empty box. And you can design the most sophisticated box in the world with the most impressive architecture, the most carefully negotiated provincial powers, and it will still sit there empty if nobody has decided what economic model it's meant to hold. So what comes after the map? Japan knew what it was building. China knew, South Korea knew, Vietnam knew, India, on its own complicated, federal, chaotic way, knew. So here's the only question that actually matters. Underneath all the noise about who controls which province, who signs which law, who wins this particular round of argument, if Pakistan institutions were redesigned tomorrow morning completely from the ground up, what would they actually be built to produce? Because until someone answers that question, it isn't reform, it's just a new box. Thank you very much for being with me. If you like this discussion, please subscribe and I'll wait for your comments. Thank you.